When you picture a road trip across America, you probably think of those perfect postcard-worthy small towns, white picket fences, a friendly general store, maybe a town square with a gazebo right in the middle. It's a wholesome, inviting image, but peel back the veneer and you'll find there's another side to America, a hidden side that's anything but inviting. These are the places that don't make it into the travel brochures, the towns with dark secrets, places that were abandoned, condemned, or just forgotten. They're the unsettling stories whispered by locals, the warnings you hear to stay off certain backroads after dark. These aren't just your average ghost towns with a few creaky buildings. We're talking about places that are genuinely, deeply unsettling. Places like Centralia, Pennsylvania, where a fire has been burning underground for over 60 years, slowly swallowing the town from below. Or Picher, Oklahoma, a town so toxic the government had to pay everyone to leave and then literally bulldozed it off the map. And then there's the one that really gets under my skin. There's a town in America where the local government evacuated everyone and won't say why. The roads are sealed, the houses are empty, and to this day, it remains a total mystery. So, buckle up, because today, we're taking a tour of America's creepiest abandoned towns. These are the stories of places that went wrong, places where something terrible happened and never left. And before we get into it, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. That way, next time you're on a road trip, you can be sure you accidentally avoid the haunted zip codes. Alright, let's get into our first stop, a place where the silence is so loud, it's deafening. Our first destination is a place so isolated it feels like it's been completely forgotten by the modern world. Welcome to Moonville, Ohio. If you try to pull this place up on your phone, you'll likely find you have 0 bars of service. There are no streetlights here, no gas stations, no convenience stores. There's just the dense dark woods of Vinton County and the crumbling remnants of a town that once was. The air here is thick and heavy, and as you walk the old overgrown railroad bed, you can't shake the feeling that you are not alone. It's a primal sort of unease, the kind your ancestors felt when they knew a predator was watching from the shadows. The heart of Moonville, and the source of its most chilling legends, is the Moonville Tunnel. This dark, curved archway of brick and stone cuts right through a hillside, and it's infamous. Back when the railroad was active, this tunnel was a notorious death trap. Its narrow design and location on a curve meant that engineers often wouldn't see someone on the tracks until it was too late. Dozens of people, railroad workers and locals alike, met a gruesome end right here, and according to the stories, many of them never truly left. The most famous is the ghost of a brakeman, who is often seen at night swinging a lantern back and forth as if signaling a train that will never come. Imagine standing at the mouth of that tunnel as dusk settles in. The woods around you are alive with the sounds of crickets and rustling leaves, but inside the tunnel, there is a profound, unnatural silence. You take a few steps in, and the temperature drops. The air grows cold and damp, smelling of wet earth and something else. Something old and sad. People who have been brave enough to walk through it report hearing disembodied whispers, feeling unseen hands brush against them, and seeing fleeting shapes move just at the edge of their vision. It's a place that feels fundamentally wrong, like a wound in the landscape that has never healed. Many paranormal investigators have visited Moonville, and they almost always leave with more questions than answers. They capture EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, of voices calling out from the darkness, names being whispered, and the faint mournful sound of a train whistle where no tracks have existed for decades. Some have even had their equipment malfunction or drain of batteries the second they step inside the tunnel, as if some unseen force is actively trying to prevent its secrets from being documented. It's one thing to hear these stories, but it's another thing entirely to be there, feeling the weight of the place press in on you from all sides. You're completely cut off. No cell service to call for help, no one around for miles. It's just you, the woods, and whatever still lingers in that tunnel. The sense of isolation is absolute. As the last bit of light fades from the sky and the tunnel becomes a perfect black void, you realize that if something were to happen to you out here, no one would know. You are at the mercy of the woods and the ghosts of Moonville, and that is a terrifying thought. It's a stark reminder that some places hold on to their tragedies, replaying them for anyone who dares to listen in the dark. From the supernatural quiet of Ohio, we now travel to a place that was silenced by a very real and very man-made poison. This is the story of Peacher, Oklahoma. If you look for Peacher on a modern map, you won't find it. In 2009, the state of Oklahoma officially dissolved the town. It ceased to exist, but the reason why is what makes this story so disturbing. Peacher was once a booming mining town, a hub for lead and zinc extraction that was vital during the World Wars. But the prosperity came at a terrible, hidden cost. For decades, the mining companies dug and dug, pulling ore from the ground and leaving behind massive piles of toxic waste called chat. These mountains of gray, gravel-like material, some towering hundreds of feet high, surrounded the town. For the kids growing up in Peacher, these were their playgrounds. They'd ride their bikes up and down the chat piles, swim in the nearby creeks, completely unaware that they were playing in a toxic wasteland. The dust from these piles, laced with heavy metals like lead, blew through the town, coating everything in a fine, poisonous powder. The consequences were devastating. An incredibly high percentage of the children in Peacher suffered from severe learning disabilities and developmental issues due to lead poisoning. The water in the creeks, a vibrant but unnatural shade of orange, was acidic enough to burn your skin. The ground itself was becoming unstable. Years of mining had created a honeycomb of tunnels beneath the town, and the risk of catastrophic collapse was growing every day. The government realized that Peacher wasn't just sick, it was terminally ill. It was a place that was actively poisoning its own residents. So in the mid-2000s, the federal government stepped in and did something unprecedented. They initiated a buyout. They offered every resident money to leave their homes, their history, and their lives behind. Most people took the deal, understanding that to stay was a death sentence. They packed up what they could and left, leaving behind a ghost town, almost overnight. The government then came in with bulldozers and began the process of literally erasing Peacher from the face of the earth, knocking down homes, schools, and churches, trying to scrub the toxic legacy away. Today, what's left of Peacher is a surreal and dangerous landscape. A few streets remain, leading to nowhere. Empty foundations are overgrown with weeds, and everywhere, the giant gray mountains of chat still dominate the horizon. A permanent monument to the town's poisoned past. It's a place that feels like it was deleted mid-sentence. A powerful, chilling example of how a town can be killed not by a ghost or a curse, but by greed and neglect, leaving behind a scar on the land that may never fully fade. Our next story takes us to a town that is literally being consumed from the inside out, a place sitting on top of a real-life hell. This is Centralia, Pennsylvania. In 1962, something happened that would seal this town's fate forever. The story goes that a group of volunteer firefighters were burning trash in an abandoned strip mine pit, a common practice at the time. What they didn't know was that the fire had ignited an exposed vein of anthracite coal. The fire went underground, and it has been burning ever since. For years, the residents of Centralia lived their lives mostly unaware of the inferno raging just a few hundred feet beneath their homes. But slowly, the signs started to appear. Smoke and steam began to vent from cracks in the ground, especially in the winter, creating an eerie, almost surreal landscape. The ground in some places became hot to the touch. Trees and vegetation started to die off as the roots were cooked from below. Residents began reporting headaches, dizziness, and other health problems from the carbon monoxide and other toxic gases seeping into their basements. The true danger became terrifyingly clear in 1981 when a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was playing in his backyard and the ground suddenly crumbled beneath him. A sinkhole, 150 feet deep and belching hot, sulfurous steam, opened up and swallowed him. He barely managed to cling to a tree root until his cousin could pull him to safety. This event was the final straw. It was proof that the entire town was unstable and unsafe. The government finally recognized the scale of the disaster they had on their hands. After numerous failed attempts to extinguish the fire, which experts now say could burn for another 250 years, the government decided on a different approach. Evacuation. Just like in Peacher, they offered buyouts to the residents. Over 1,000 people left, and the federal government demolished their homes, leaving a grid of empty streets and vacant lots. By the 1990s, the town was almost entirely empty. Its zip code was revoked, and for all intents and purposes, Centralia was wiped off the map. But what makes Centralia's story so compelling is that a handful of residents refused to leave. Despite the toxic air, the unstable ground, and the profound isolation, They fought for their right to stay in the only home they'd ever known. As of today, only a few people remain, living in a ghost town where smoke perpetually rises from the earth. Driving through Centralia is like visiting another planet. You can see the buckled, cracked pavement of the infamous graffiti highway, now covered in colorful art, and steam venting from fissures in the woods. It's a haunting, living testament to a disaster that is still unfolding, a town slowly being erased by an unstoppable fire below. Now we journey back to Ohio, to a place shrouded in mystery and conspiracy. This isn't your typical ghost town left to decay naturally. This is a place that was intentionally and systematically cleared out, and the reasons why are still a subject of intense debate. This is the story of Boston, Ohio, but you'll know it by its more infamous name, Helltown. The name itself is enough to send a chill down your spine, and it's right there on the map, a label that seems more like a warning than a place name. The official story is that in 1974, President Gerald Ford signed a bill that allowed the National Park Service to acquire land to create the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. The government used eminent domain to buy up all the properties in the village of Boston and the surrounding area. Residents were forced to sell their homes and leave. The plan was to demolish the buildings and let the land return to its natural state. But that's not exactly what happened. The houses were boarded up, but many were never torn down. They were just left to rot. This is where the legends begin to take over. Why would the government evacuate an entire town and then just leave it standing? The roads leading into the heart of Helltown are sealed off with ominous no trespassing signs. If you were to venture past these barriers, which I absolutely do not recommend, you would find a scene straight out of a horror movie. Empty houses with furniture still inside, a school bus left abandoned in the woods, and a church that is said to be a hotspot for satanic rituals. The air is thick with a sense of dread, a feeling that you are trespassing somewhere you should not be. The folklore surrounding Helltown is wild and varied. One of the most persistent stories claims the evacuation wasn't for a park at all, but was a cover-up for a Kemigowansed, was a Kaskin Spronse, Bildanseum, Oberdansan Danses, Obotin Stensantan Stense, Ombat mutated, the local residents. Another legend speaks of a serial killer who stalks the woods. Then there's the end of the world road, a steep winding hill that ends abruptly in the dense forest, where it's said that if you get stuck, you'll be tormented by ghosts. There are tales of a phantom hearse that chases people out of the area, and strange cryptid-like creatures seen darting between the trees. While many of these stories are likely just local legends, the core mystery remains. Why was the town evacuated so quickly, and why were the buildings left to decay instead of being demolished as planned? The secrecy and the abandoned state of the town have created a vacuum that has been filled with our worst fears. Helltown has become a canvas onto which people project their anxieties. The sealed roads, the empty homes, and the chilling name on the map all combine to create one of America's most enduring and unsettling modern myths. It's a place that feels cursed, not by a ghost, but by a secret. Our next stop is not abandoned, but its isolation is so extreme it creates a unique and unsettling atmosphere. We're heading far north, to the chilling shores of Alaska, to a town called Whittier. Whittier is unlike any other town in America. It's nestled between towering glacier-carved mountains and the cold gray waters of Prince William Sound. It's breathtakingly beautiful, but its geography also makes it one of the most isolated places you can imagine, and the way its residents live is truly bizarre. Nearly all of Whittier's 200 or so residents live in a single building. It's a 14-story former Cold War-era army barracks called Begich Towers. This one building contains not only apartments, but also the town's post office, a police station, a health clinic, a convenience store, and even a church in the basement. The school is connected to the building by an underground tunnel, so kids don't have to go outside during the harsh, brutal winters, where winds can reach 60 miles per hour and snow can pile up over 20 feet high. Living in Begich Towers is like living in a self-contained vertical town. Your neighbors are not just next door, they're also your grocer, your police chief, and your pastor. Everyone knows everyone, and everyone knows everyone's business. While some might find that cozy, for many, the lack of privacy and the constant proximity to the same few hundred people can be incredibly claustrophobic. It's a social experiment playing out in real time, a microcosm of society sealed within 4 concrete walls against the vast, unforgiving Alaskan wilderness. But what truly makes Whittier one of the creepiest towns is how you get there. There is only one road in and out, and it passes through the Anton Anderson Memorial Tunnel. This is a one-lane tunnel, more than 2.5 miles long, that is shared by both cars and trains. You have to wait for your turn to go, as traffic alternates direction every half hour. And here's the unsettling part. The tunnel closes at night. From 10:30 p.m. until 5:30 a.m., it is completely shut down. If you're not in by then, you're not getting in. If you're in, you're not getting out. Imagine being in Whittier when that tunnel closes. The town is completely cut off from the rest of the world, surrounded by impassable mountains on 3 sides and a frigid ocean on the other. You are trapped. The feeling of isolation is absolute. The residents are used to it, but for an outsider, it's a deeply unnerving thought. Whittier, Alaska, is a place that forces you to confront the idea of confinement, both physically by the landscape and socially within the walls of Begich Towers. It's a town at the edge of the world, locked away every single night. From a town of 200 people living in one building, we now go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, a town with a population of just 1. Let's travel to the vast empty plains of Nebraska, to the town of Monowi. Looking at Monowi, you might not even realize it's a town. It consists of just a few buildings, a tavern, a library, and a handful of derelict structures slowly being reclaimed by the prairie. But Monowi is, officially, an incorporated municipality. And its sole resident is a woman named Elsie Eiler. Elsie is in her 80s and she is the mayor, the clerk, the treasurer, the librarian, and the bartender of Monowi. Every year she dutifully posts a notice for the mayoral election. And every year, she votes for herself. She grants her own liquor license and collects her own taxes. She is the entire government and the entire population. The town once had a peak population of 150 people back in the 1930s with a post office, stores, and even a small prison. But like so many small farming communities in the Great Plains, its residents slowly moved away or passed on. Elsie's husband, Rudy, was the last other resident. When he passed away in 2004, Elsie became the only person left, but instead of leaving, she stayed. She continues to run the Monowi Tavern, which is the town's only business. People drive for miles to come have a beer or a burger and listen to her stories. The tavern is a time capsule filled with pictures and memorabilia from the town's past. It's the living, breathing heart of a town that, by all other measures, is already dead. One of the most remarkable things about Monowi is the library. Rudy's last wish was to create a public library for the town. Before he died, he and Elsie converted a small shed into the Rudy's library, stocking it with over 5,000 books from his personal collection. Today, Elsie maintains it. A library in a town of 1. It operates on an honor system. Anyone can come, unlock the door, and borrow a book. It's a beautiful, slightly melancholic monument to a love of reading and a love for a town that no longer exists. There's a quiet, haunting loneliness to Monowi. When the last customer leaves the tavern and Elsie locks up for the night, she is utterly alone. The wind sweeping across the plains is the only sound. The empty buildings stand as silent witnesses to the lives that were once lived there. Yet, there's also something incredibly resilient and inspiring about Elsie's story. She is the keeper of Monowi's memory, a single point of light in a vast darkness, single-handedly keeping her town on the map. It's a story that is both creepy in its solitude and beautiful in its devotion. Some places are abandoned because of disaster or economic decline, but our next location is said to have been abandoned for a much more sinister reason. It's cursed. We're heading to the dark woods of northwestern Connecticut to a place nicknamed the Village of the Damned. This is Dudleytown. Unlike the other towns on our list, you won't find any standing buildings here. All that remains are a few crumbling cellar holes and stone foundations, almost completely swallowed by the forest. The story of Dudleytown begins in the 1740s with the Dudley family, from whom the town gets its name. From the very beginning, a shadow seemed to hang over the place. The land was rocky and ill-suited for farming, making life a constant struggle. But the hardship went beyond just poor soil. A string of bizarre and tragic events plagued the residents. People were said to go insane, take their own lives, or simply vanish into the woods without a trace. One of the first residents, Nathaniel Carter, moved there only to have his entire family wiped out by a deadly epidemic. He fled, and his house was left to rot. the litany of horrors continued. A man named Gershon Hollister came home one day to find his wife had been struck by lightning and killed. Another resident, a man named John Brophy, was said to have gone mad, murdering his own family before hanging himself. And then there was Mary Cheney, the wife of a United States senator, who hanged herself in the woods near Dudleytown after claiming to see demonic creatures. The stories piled up, one tragedy after another, until the place developed a reputation for being fundamentally evil. By the early 1900s, the last resident had left, and Dudleytown was completely abandoned. The forest grew back, covering the fields and roads, and the village was lost to time. But its dark reputation only grew stronger. Paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers began visiting the site, drawn by the legends of the curse. They reported a host of terrifying phenomena. An unnatural silence where not even birds will sing, disembodied voices whispering from the trees, and the feeling of being watched by an unseen, malevolent presence. Many claim to have captured photos of strange orbs and shadowy figures among the ruins. Today, Dudleytown is private property, and the owners, a group known as the Dark Entry Forest Association, strictly forbid trespassing. They have gone to great lengths to keep people out, and for good reason. The area is remote, the terrain is treacherous, and the legends are terrifying. The curse is said to extend to anyone who disturbs the site or takes a souvenir, dooming them to a life of bad luck and tragedy. Dudleytown is a place where history has curdled into a dark myth. A chilling reminder that some places in the woods are best left alone. For our next story, we travel to the southern tip of Illinois, to a place where two mighty rivers meet. This is Cairo, a town whose slow, painful death is written on the walls of its decaying buildings. At its peak, Cairo was a bustling, prosperous city. Its strategic location at the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers made it a vital hub for shipping and trade. It was a grand city with beautiful Victorian mansions, ornate commercial buildings, and a sense of great promise. But that promise soured, and today, Cairo is a shadow of its former self. Cairo's decline was a long and complicated process, a perfect storm of economic hardship, racial tension, and natural disaster. As river trade declined with the rise of railroads and highways, the town's economic engine sputtered, but it was the deep-seated racial strife that truly tore the city apart. Throughout the 20th century, Cairo was the site of lynchings, boycotts, and violent clashes, earning it a reputation for hatred and division. Businesses closed, and people fled, both black and white, leaving a hollowed-out city behind. The population, once over 15,000, has now dwindled to less than 1,700. Walking through downtown Cairo today is a profoundly eerie experience. It feels like the entire city is holding its breath. Block after block of magnificent 19th century buildings stand empty and derelict. Windows are boarded up or shattered, revealing dark, cavernous interiors. Weeds grow up through the sidewalks, and paint peels from facades like sunburnt skin. It has the feel of a post-apocalyptic movie set, but this is no movie. This is the real slow-motion collapse of an American city. The scale of the decay is staggering. Given its history of tragedy and its current state of ruin, it's no surprise that Cairo has a reputation for being intensely haunted. The grand empty mansions are said to be filled with the spirits of their former owners. The old Gem Theater, now a crumbling ruin, is rumored to be haunted by the ghost of a woman who died in a fire. Locals whisper stories of the White Roosters, the ghosts of a vigilante group still patrolling the empty streets. The entire town feels heavy with the weight of its sad, violent past. Cairo is a ghost town that isn't completely empty yet, which in some ways makes it even creepier. The few remaining residents live amongst the ruins, a constant daily reminder of what their city has lost. It's a place trapped between life and death. The mighty rivers that gave it birth now constantly threaten to flood it out of existence, held back by a massive seawall. Cairo is a stark and somber warning of how a city can lose its soul, left to drown in its own history. Most ghost towns are left to the mercy of the elements, to crumble and fade back into the earth. But our next stop is different. It's a town that has been frozen in time, deliberately preserved in a state of what's called arrested decay. Let's head to the high desert of California, to the legendary gold rush town of Bodie. Bodie was once a wild, booming mining camp, the epitome of the Old West. In the late 1870s, it had a population of nearly 10,000 people, dozens of saloons, a notorious red light district, and a reputation for violence and lawlessness. The saying went, "Goodbye God, I'm going to Bodie." The gold eventually ran out, and like so many boom towns, Bodie went bust. The miners left, the businesses closed, and the town was gradually abandoned. But unlike other ghost towns, Bodie didn't completely disappear. In 1962, it was designated a state historic park. The decision was made not to restore the town to its former glory, but to preserve it exactly as it was found. The buildings are propped up from the inside to keep them from collapsing, but the exteriors are left to weather and age naturally. The result is one of the most authentic and atmospheric ghost towns in the world. Walking the silent, dusty streets of Bodie is like stepping through a portal into the past. You can peer through the grimy windows of the general store and see shelves still stocked with canned goods and supplies. The schoolhouse has lessons still written on the chalkboard. In the saloons you can see pool tables and dusty bottles lined up behind the bar. Homes are filled with furniture, dishes on the table, as if the occupants just stepped out for a moment and never came back. It's an incredibly intimate and unsettling glimpse into a life that ended over a century ago. This state of arrested decay creates a powerful sense of presence, and it's likely why Bodie is considered to be extremely haunted. Park rangers and visitors have reported countless strange occurrences. They hear the phantom sounds of children laughing near the schoolhouse, or the ghostly music of a saloon piano playing in an empty building. Some have seen the apparition of a woman in a rocking chair, knitting in the window of the cane house. The ghost of a little girl who was killed by a mining accident is said to haunt the cemetery, her giggles echoing among the tombstones. But the most famous legend of Bodie is its curse. The story goes that any visitor who takes anything from the town, even something as small as a nail or a piece of glass, will be cursed with terrible luck. The park office has a collection of letters from people who have returned stolen items, begging for the curse to be lifted. They write of job losses, financial ruin, illness, and freak accidents that all began the moment they took their souvenir. Whether real or imagined, the curse serves as a powerful protector for the town, ensuring that Bodie remains just as it was left. A haunted, perfectly preserved moment in time. Our final story is of a town that looked like the perfect American suburb, a peaceful community that became a national symbol for environmental disaster. This is Times Beach, Missouri. In the 1970s, Times Beach was a pleasant working-class town on the banks of the Merrimack River. It had tree-lined streets, modest homes, and a close-knit community. But the town had a problem with its unpaved roads, which kicked up a lot of dust in the summer. So, the city government did what many small towns did at the time. They hired a waste oil hauler to spray the roads to keep the dust down. What they didn't know was that the hauler, a man named Russell Bliss, was mixing the waste oil with a toxic byproduct from a chemical plant. This byproduct was contaminated with an incredibly dangerous substance, dioxin. For 4 years, between 1972 and 1976, the streets of Times Beach were repeatedly sprayed with one of the most potent carcinogens known to man. At the time, no one suspected a thing. The oil kept the dust down, and life went on as normal. But soon, strange and disturbing things began to happen. Animals started dying in huge numbers. Birds fell out of the sky. The town's entire horse population was wiped out, suffering from horrible illnesses. People, especially children, began to report a range of health problems, including skin rashes, headaches, and other chronic issues. The residents were scared and confused, with no idea what was causing the sickness that was sweeping through their town. It wasn't until 1982, when the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, came to test the soil, that the horrifying truth was revealed. The tests showed that the levels of dioxin in Times Beach were over 100 times higher than what was considered safe. The entire town was contaminated. The news came at the worst possible time, just as the Merrimack River flooded the town, spreading the toxic soil everywhere. The federal government declared a state of emergency. The situation was so dire that the EPA made a drastic decision. They would buy out the entire town. Every home, every business, every property. In 1985, Times Beach was officially evacuated and condemned. For years, the town sat empty, a silent, toxic ghost town sealed off from the outside world. The government then undertook a massive cleanup operation, building a giant incinerator on site and burning all of the contaminated soil and debris from the demolished homes. Today, the land where Times Beach once stood is a state park, named Route 66 State Park. But there are no playgrounds or campgrounds here. It's a strangely empty park, a green scar on the landscape. A small visitor center in the park's old roadhouse is the only building left, serving as a museum and a memorial to the town that was poisoned to death. From a fire that can't be quenched to a town erased by poison, the stories of these places are etched into the American landscape. They are unsettling reminders that not every town gets a happy ending. Some are cursed by tragedy, some are swallowed by secrets, and others are simply forgotten, left to decay in silence. These aren't just coordinates on a map, they are scars, each with a story of loss and mystery. They challenge our idea of home and safety, proving that sometimes the most terrifying things aren't ghosts or monsters, but the quiet, empty spaces where people used to be. These towns force us to look at the darker side of progress, ambition, and even just bad luck. They are the footnotes of history, the cautionary tales that fade from memory but never fully disappear from the land itself. The smoke still rises in Centralia, the chat piles still loom over Peacher, and the silence in Moonville is still deafening. These places exist in a state between memory and oblivion, and their stories serve as a powerful warning about the ghosts we create, both literal and metaphorical. And if you thought these towns were unsettling, just wait for what's next. The world is full of strange and forgotten places, each with its own dark story to tell. Drop a comment with the creepiest place you've ever visited. I'd love to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will make you think twice before taking the scenic route. See you in the next one.